as you started to face yourself, what were some of the parts of you that you felt like had to die so that you can move into the next version of you, the version of you that was giving you hope and that you knew existed within you? Amiga, friend, soul sister, Yasmeen. It's been a while since we recorded our first episode together. It was fall of 2022. Our episode together was called Panic Attack, one of the most listened to episodes of the First and Healing podcast. And we recorded that. Both of us found ourselves in moments of our lives that even though como que estábamos saliendo, we were finding the light, we were looking for it. I would say que las dos estábamos como un poquito drowning, you know,
just a little.
half.
Yeah, just a little.
Just a little.
Oh, shit, yeah.
You were what, two moves prior to where you're at now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was literally across the country. I was in Tennessee and you were in Illinois. We had never met. We had never
Yeah,
met
we
in
hadn't
person.
met, no. Mm-mm.
No. Do you want to talk a little bit about like where you were at in those moments when we first recorded together?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, first of all, the episode that we did together was a big focus on, you know, living through and healing through an anxiety disorder, specifically, you know, like dealing with panic attacks and living through recovering from agoraphobia. But at the time, I mean, I would say I was still very much at the in the middle maybe of like working through everything, like definitely still drowning like you said, but doing my best to keep my head above water and like also help people on their journeys. But I would say
Yeah.
compared to today, that there's no comparison. And I think that that definitely is a sign of hope for other people as well, because when you put in the work and you end up looking forward, you know, sometimes you might question like, is it really going to be worth it? You know, I remember back
Yeah.
then around the time we recorded the episode, it was still hard for me to talk about the things that we talked about, like going through panic attacks and what I was struggling with and the physical side of it, and like you sharing your story. Like it even still triggered me at that time to hear other people's stories, you know? So I think that yeah, if you sit there, when I was at that point in my life, I didn't know I was going to get here to where I'm sitting here today with the mindset, the life, and the mentality that I have. But
Yeah.
that's my one also shout out to anyone listening to this, is that if you go listen to that and you listen to this today, that's a sign of hope as well, that if you put in the work, you can do it. But do everything you can to keep your head above water, and you'll be able to climb out of that ocean. You will.
I love it. You're already starting off with like the inspo, the like, you got this. And it's so true. I want to just mention at that time, you were what is called like housebound, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
means that you didn't really leave your home. I think you would go on walks,
At that time,
but
I think so.
yeah,
Yeah,
but only to
but I
like a
wasn't
specific
free.
like location. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I
there was
wasn't
kind of like a
completely
limit.
free.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to mention that because I think like when things get hard, there is a sense of things kind of closing in. It could be your visions, your dreams, they kind of get closer and you can't look further away. It could be your nervous system getting activated, so you kind of like in your situation, the places you're able to go literally physically are limited.
Mm.
It can be like, for me it was more circumstantial, so it was like I was in a state that I didn't know. My sister was going through her cancer treatment, and so that felt very limited in like what I was able to do with my life. I felt like really stuck, really lost. So
Yeah.
just painting the picture a little bit of like the cave, right, that a lot of us find ourselves sometimes without wanting to get there, without even understanding sometimes how we got there. And then there's like this desire to get out of there, and then that's when you need to kind of dig a little deeper and recognize like, how did I get here, and make sense of it if possible, right? And that's what I think you and I were doing. We were trying to find, not only make sense of it for ourselves, but then trying to help others in some way through that, right? Like understanding we don't have it all figured out, but how can we share what we're going through so that other people don't feel alone, basically.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that, yeah, when you bring it up, thinking about it, I wasn't completely housebound, but I was still like 70% housebound. So that little percent that was left, I was going on walks, I was kind of going out here and there, but it was still tremendously hard for me. So I feel like I was in a bubble, like if
Yeah.
everything outside of the bubble was too difficult, it was hard for me to even go on walks or experience life. Like, I was so overstimulated by everything. My nervous system was just completely shot. I just didn't know how to even cope with life, period. And like
Mm,
you said, all of us have a different reason, or I guess trigger, as to where our anxiety comes from.
mhm.
But I definitely think that regardless of how you experience it, it can be in its own way debilitating.
Yeah.
Definitely for someone that struggled with agoraphobia, I think it's like life altering,
Mhm.
but once you start to work to get out of that comfort zone, because sometimes our comfort zone is so small, it's doesn't go further than the arm's length of our body, we want to
Yeah.
stay safe and we want to stay
Yeah.
in that little bubble. And but once we realize life goes on outside of your bubble, whether or not you think it is, and you are the only one that can make the decision to heal and move forward and change your life and react to what is happening in your life. You cannot control all the time what is happening in your life. It's how you
Mm,
react to it. And that's something that I think brought me a lot of power during that time, was really realizing you can't control anything. And it took me a long time to accept it. Once you really accept it and embrace that, you can only control your reaction. I think you get a lot of power back.
mm,
Yeah. So reclaiming your
mm.
power when you feel so worthless and so weak, I definitely think is like such a beautiful thing on this journey for sure.
Yeah. Oof. I think that's so, like, just thinking about how you felt powerless, but then you were started to reclaim your power. Um And I love that you're bringing up, for example, like acceptance, because I think that's a big part of like moving past where you're at. We can spend a lot of time rejecting where we find ourselves, right? Like, I reject this, this isn't me, or covering it up with coping mechanisms, kind of like hiding from the shadow or what you're actually experiencing.
Mhm.
I think that like that starts us off well into what I wanted to talk about with you today, which is like the process of birthing a new version of ourselves. Sometimes when you're in those spaces, you start to hear about like your full potential or living your best life. And that's
Mhm.
kind of the things that you grab onto. But in order to get there, there's almost like a letting go of this current version of you that has to happen. And sometimes that takes time, right? Like, not only to accept where you're at, but then accept that you're willing to make a change to move past it. It's like you're kind of facing yourself in those moments. Wouldn't you say? Kind of like a mirror that you're having to understand it's me versus me in this moment in a way.
Yeah, and I think that hits heavy because I feel like at one of the darkest moments of my journey, I had to really sit there with myself and realize this really is me versus me. I am my own biggest enemy right now. And if I do not work through this, I myself will continue to destroy my life. And I'm the one who
Mm,
truly is the person that's behind this. So really sitting with those deep parts of yourself, your shadows, and all that you didn't look at throughout your whole life, there comes a point to
mm,
where that is screaming so loud at you, and that you need to take a look at that. Because there's something that always sticks in my mind, by one of my favorite speakers, Lisa Nichols, and she says, I need to allow myself to die to the version of myself that I was in order to allow the version of myself that is meant to be to come alive. So how many parts of yourself are you willing to let die? And that's scary when you say it
wow.
that way, right?
Yeah.
It was scary to me when I was first hearing that. I was like, what do you mean you have to let yourself die? And the truth
Hmm.
of it is that the version of ourselves that have gotten through the trauma, that have gotten through pain, gotten through anxiety, or whatever it may be that you've gone through in your life, there's a lot of habits and mindsets and day-to-day habits that do not align with the person that you are meant to be. right? With
Mm.
that full version of yourself that expresses light, that is a powerful being, that is present, that is love, that is light, whatever it might be that you want to be in this world, that version
Yeah.
of yourself exists, but it's not going to be accessible to you until you allow the version of yourself that was trying to survive to die, right? You need to let
Mm.
the version of yourself that is stepping in to come in, but that's really scary when you
Yeah.
don't even know who that is, right? It's
Ooh.
like, what the hell? Like, who? Right? Because you only know the version of yourself that's wounded, that has been traumatized, that is anxious, that is afraid
Yes.
of everything, and that's who's been in the driver's seat. So you stepping out with aside yourself and letting something or someone or an energy that feels unfamiliar to you take the wheel in your life is really hard. And I
Yeah.
commend anyone that is in that process of allowing themselves to die to become the version of themselves that they're meant to be, because it's not easy. It's easier said than it is done.
Oof.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It almost feels like there's a catching up that has to happen before you even
Mm,
can let that version of you die. It's like the acceptance kind of, I saw it as like it impulses you forward into who you like, the starting point. So
mhm.
I think like sometimes there's like a backlog of denial, of hiding from ourselves, of hiding from our
Yeah.
triggers, hiding what makes us scared, hiding behind perfectionism, overachievement, behind all the things, being a people pleaser, right? So when you are willing to face that, it almost brings you to point zero. And I think
Mhm.
that's where you're able to then be like, okay, I no longer want this for myself, right? I want different. And then that's like, okay, cool, bet. Like the universe is like, awesome. That
Yeah.
requires and the entry, like the ticket to entry is then letting this version of you go, as you said. I'm wondering if you are comfortable sharing with, like, as you started to face yourself, what were some of the parts of you that you felt like had to die so that you can move into the next version of you, the version of you that was giving you hope and that you knew existed within you. And even like, I think if you're going through this, what it feels like, it's like you feel happy, you feel like, oh, yes, I can, you feel inspired. And then there's something within you that shrinks, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
like this like expansion and contraction that can happen. So I'm wondering, how did you experience it, or what parts of you started to stand out for you that were like, oof, this has to go?
Mm, I think it starts with radical honesty. If you are not honest with yourself about what is truly the problem, I think that it will be very difficult to find the true authenticity within yourself, because I think for me, I lied to myself for a long time about what
Mm.
actually was bothering me, what was within me that I needed to even look at or let go of. I thought it might have been this, but it was really
Mm-hmm.
that, just kind of as an example. I was
Yeah.
lying to myself for a long time about everything. I think that I was in a lot of denial about my life, about things that have happened. And I also think that as much as I painted myself to be like a warrior, to be like a very strong person, I definitely was holding on to a heavy amount of like victim mentality. Right. So letting go
Mm.
of the version of myself that I saw as a victim, who
Mm-hmm.
always needed justice, who always needed to fight, who always needed and needed and needed. I literally needed to take a step back and realize what is the version of myself that needs all of this. And it really was the victim version of
Mm.
myself. So it was
Mm.
being radically honest with myself and seeing, where am I playing and continuously choosing to stay the victim of things that have happened in my life? Am I taking ownership for the things that I can take ownership of, or putting up boundaries where I can put up boundaries, or picking
Mm.
up the pieces of my own life back together? We have a lot
Yeah.
of power of choice, and we have the power of autonomy, but I wasn't necessarily taking accountability for myself. Um,
Mm.
so I think definitely the victim mentality was a big part of me that I had to let go of. Um, Definitely having and doing everything with radical honesty, whether it was saying things that I had never said, and it goes right back to Lisa Nichols, who my favorite speaker. She says you have to say the things you've never said, do the things you've never done, in order to be the
Mm.
person you've never been. So I took that word for word, and started to say the things I never dared to say because I was
Wow.
afraid of what people were going to think because I was a people pleaser. So I
Yeah.
had to let go of the people pleaser in me, the victim in me. I had to let go of what I thought life should look like. I thought that I should not have to struggle with this anxiety, that I should not have agoraphobia, that I should not have crippling
Mm.
anxiety and panic. I kept on
Mhm.
thinking that this should not be a problem. Why am I living this way? This is not me. So, like, I had a lot of denial within myself, and that was
Yeah.
keeping me stuck because
Yeah.
I didn't want to accept it. I was like, how is this me? This isn't me, right?
Right.
But in
Yeah.
a way, not accepting it and not letting it be was the problem, right?
Mhm.
So just being honest, radical honesty. I think that's my biggest advice for anyone is to start at radical honesty when you're starting to think about what are the pieces of yourself that you need to let die in order to step into the person that you are meant to be. Is how can you be so honest that it kind of hurts you a little bit?
Yeah.
It
Oh, it's
needs to
gonna hurt
hurt.
you.
Yeah, it needs to hurt. I think it
Yeah.
needs to hurt. I think the
Yeah.
hurt is where you eventually like fill it with power. Like I think it has to hurt. If it doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
it's not real. It's not the real one.
Right.
So
And I
that's
love
at
it
least
because
I think.
I think probably people give it different names. Like I'm thinking of an ego death because it's like your ego
Mm.
is like, this isn't me, right? This isn't
Mhm.
me. I shouldn't have to struggle with this. Why is this still a problem? And it's like, well, you can question it all you want, but it's still a problem. It's still there.
Yeah.
It's not going away,
Mhm.
right? You can deny it all you want. Like, no, this isn't supposed to be happening. Okay, but it is. Whatever it is, right? Like, okay, and it is. And by the way, like Yaz and I, we have these types of conversations a lot. So I think we're saying it with a lot of honesty, but we know it's hard, right? Like we don't want to bypass the fact that this is so hard to accept and it
It's really hard. I mean, it's really freaking hard. And that's what I always tell people. I'm like, you might see 30 seconds with somebody saying something or
yeah.
somebody giving advice or listen to us say this. Oh, yeah, just let go of the parts of yourself and you let go. You know how long it took to even get to that point of like seeing what it really was? Like, I don't know, even thinking about it, it's like I see myself hitting so many walls and going through
Mhm.
dark places, endless like hours of crying, journaling, being radically real with myself, sitting through my
Mhm.
darkness, having hard ass conversations with family, with friends, with, people in my life that have hurt me, that I've gone through trauma. Like, I mean, like going through the dirt. Some people need to go through the literal dirt of their lives in order to really go back up. And that's what
Yeah.
I mean. Like, it's not rainbows and butterflies and just meditation and sitting with pretty things. It's not, like
No.
this is real. It's heavy, but once you get through, like genuinely, it is the most rewarding, one of the most rewarding journeys that you can go through. Because I mean, when you sit with the darkness of your soul, I think that you learn to appreciate such a different side of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's crazy cuz like it's only because I feel like I also went through that I can truly understand. And yeah, thank you for also like acknowledging it's not, we say it easily but it's not. I, as you were saying that, like so many nights of crying and journaling, I remember that for myself too, of feeling confused, feeling frustrated, feeling like I had the answer, then feeling lost again, feeling like I was
Hmm.
seeing the light, then it going dark again.
Yeah.
And talking about that ego and like the not wanting to face what's really actually there. Around that time, what I channeled, like, oh, the problem is blank, it was my job. It was like human resources and my career is the problem. And I got a coach at that time and I was like, I need your help finding out what I can do instead. And
Hmm.
one of the meetings, she was like, how is your relationship with your parents? And I was
Mm.
like, this has nothing to do with
Yeah.
this. Like, I'm here for my
Yeah.
career. Give me the answers.
Yeah. You're like, I just need to quit my job. That's it. I promise. Everything else will be perfect.
Everything else
And
is
she's like,
great.
nah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one of the shadows that I had to face was what you said of the victim mentality, where I hid behind, I just want to make my parents proud.
Hmm.
But hiding behind that allowed me to blame that instead of saying, I'm really scared of saying what I actually want to do. I
Mm,
fear so hard believing in myself and trusting in myself enough to make my own decisions and potentially fail.
mhm.
That was the shadow. That was
Yeah.
what's hiding there and what I didn't want to face because it was going to take a lot of mother effing courage from me. It was going to take me finding my voice. It was going to take me setting boundaries, facing potential criticism. That's crazy, right? Because, like, when you're first thinking about it, it's like, oh, like, I just need to find a new career. That's what the problem is. No, girl. It's you're going to finally find the voice that you've hidden behind being a people pleaser, getting along with everyone, to now potentially starting your own conflict, saying things that don't fall in line with what other people expect of you. And that's scary as
Whispered. Fuck.
fuck.
I mean, it's scary. It really is scary, but it's kind of interesting you say that about how like you thought the problem was your job, you know,
Yeah.
and bringing it back to anxiety. You can think the problem is anxiety or it is just panic. It's not. It's what is causing it. What is behind
Mhm.
it? What is actually there fueling the fire? It's not always the fire. It's what is the wood you keep on feeding that damn fire that it keeps on growing out of control, you know. So
Mhm.
it's really interesting that like everything in our lives, like there's constantly a duality behind it, you know. What is feeding it, what's keeping it alive? The problem in and of itself isn't the job, it isn't anxiety, it isn't XYZ. It's actually what is all behind it that continues to push it to be a problem. And sometimes we don't want to look at it, we just want the
Yeah.
answer, and
Right.
that's very normal. I just wanted the answer for a long time, but then I had to realize, oh crap, it's actually the thousand things that are hiding behind the anxiety that are the problem, not the
Yeah.
actual anxiety, you know. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a journey. It really is a journey, but loving yourself through every single phase of growing into who you want to be, I think is so powerful. And even loving those hard parts, giving yourself love for the moments where you've had to dig yourself out of the darkness,
Yeah.
because you know, they held on and they're still here.
I love that you're bringing up self-love because I think that what can happen is when we start to see a little bit clearer, like, oh, these are the parts of me that are holding me back. There can be some resentment towards that and a rejection of it, like other than, well, that's not me again, right? Like rejecting it. And in fact, what it takes to move past it is
Hmm.
integrating and recognizing actually that is just as much you as the parts of you that feel good, the parts of you that look good to others. This other part of you, the part of you that is scared to speak up, the part of you that disagrees, the part of you that may make others uncomfortable when it comes out, is actually you too. And it's asking for you to give it the time of day as opposed to, well, like, how do I leave it behind? How do I just get past it? How do I, right? Like, because I think sometimes when we're searching for solutions, we're trying to like enterrar esas cosas, but that's not actually what we mean by like letting parts of you die. It's like a part of it has to come with acceptance, like integration, and then moving past it.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's like letting those parts of yourself die. It does, it's like when someone passes away, we don't just never think about them ever again. You know, do we
Mm,
ever even talk bad about them? No, we don't, because we want to honor that person or honor those memories. So the same thing goes with the parts of you that you need to let go of or let die, because I think even for a long time as I started healing and I started to get better, I also carried a lot of shame for the version of me that couldn't do everyday things. And then once I
mm,
started to do the everyday things again, I would trigger myself when I, even though I felt fine, and tell myself, oh my
mm-hmm,
gosh, why aren't you having a hard time right now? Why aren't you reacting the same way? You know, so it's kind of funny because, you know, you can use that past version of yourself to basically sabotage the future version of yourself.
mm-hmm,
But really showing love for that version of yourself that struggled is so important, because sometimes when we get back to living life or doing things that we're not used to doing, it might feel weird. I know for me, for a long time, once I started to recover from agoraphobia and I started living my life, going out every single day, driving, like there was so many moments where I would just be there and be like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just like living my life now. Like, what? Like, I make friends now, I do all these things now. Like, it's like I would have moments where I would even question it, you know, and
Mm,
it I had to, in those moments, thank myself for the version of myself that couldn't do it, and give her love and give her, you know, the kudos and the props for getting through, for surviving, but knowing that it's okay to live life now. It's okay to make
mhm.
memories. It's okay to feel just so grateful for living life, and it's good to not feel anxious all the time, you know. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny cuz you just get so used to chaos that you feel like you want to keep choosing it,
Mhm.
but our bodies will always choose a familiar health and choose like a beautiful future.
Yeah.
And when you choose a beautiful future, it might feel great, but sometimes we're our own worst, you know, like enemy. We need to learn how to bring with ourselves those versions of ourselves, but giving it love, but knowing that it no longer needs to drive the car. It doesn't need to drive the car. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to carry shame. But those versions of yourself got you to today, and you're allowed to remember them, but you don't need to live through them anymore. You can let them rest.
Ooh.
You know, you can leave.
Yeah.
They're okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Yes. And as you were talking, I think something we could talk about too is how comfortable we can get even in the, like, let's say when you're freshly in there, you're like, this is so uncomfortable. This isn't me. But then humans are so interesting porque we can get super comfy wherever we're at, right? So even in the darker spaces, we can like get cozy and feel like, oh, well, maybe I'm just this small and I just don't have, new experiences and I don't have dreams and that's okay. I just get to stay here. And so I'm thinking like, for example, me, there was a moment where I remember I started to smoke a lot, right? I would like garden and that was like my fun. I'm just going to stay at home, garden, get zooted and like and not progress and not move forward in my life and not have dreams, and I got comfy in the dark space,
Mhm.
and sometimes those around you will actually prefer you stay there with them too. If you found friendships in those dark spaces, if you found comfiness in those places, I had friendships that when I started to want to get out of the hole that I found myself in, would make fun of me, would be like, oh, like you're going to be back to smoking and whatever, or you're not fun anymore. So I think that's also worth noting that even without realizing it, like you may find comfort, well, yeah, I think we mentioned it, but like you may find comfort in your comfort zone, and you may get comfy, and it's gonna feel, the new thing will become getting out of it, which is weird because like you were never supposed to stay there to begin with, but at some
Mhm.
point it feels so permanent that you think you will, you know
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that saying that's like, you might be afraid of what the future might hold, but you should be more afraid of staying where you're at right now. You should
Yeah.
be more afraid of like being in the exact same spot as you were last year, you know, with no growth and with no anything kind of a deal. And I think it's interesting that you bring up that, you know, sometimes people around us might not understand, you know. And I just want to
Mhm.
remind people that, like, if you're on a healing journey and people don't understand what you need to do in order to get better, that it's okay. You don't need to convince people, you know, that
Yeah.
they need to understand. Sometimes people will never understand if they've never been through it themselves. They won't get
Yeah.
it. And honestly, even sometimes it doesn't mean that they don't love you. It just means that they just don't get it and they've never been where you were at before. And sometimes giving yourself space, like respectfully, um, is the most important thing you can do, because you don't need to keep on wasting time making other people understand you, because they might not ever. So
Yeah.
stand in your truth and know that if you want to get better or change yourself, or, you know, get to the version of yourself that you envision, that sometimes you might have to do things that not everyone thinks makes sense or that other people just
Right.
discredit, or like in Priscilla's case, if you have friends that are at like a more like sociable want to garden level, maybe you don't want to garden anymore. Maybe you want to cultivate different projects, um,
Yeah.
that they're not going to want you to. And you have to be able to say, hey, I don't want to garden this plant anymore. I want to work on other things.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard, it's hard to step out of the norm that you might be used to, but sometimes it's what you need in order to get to whatever next version of yourself that you might be envisioning. And I
Hmm.
know we go through this so many times in our lives for different reasons. It's a journey, it's not a destination, obviously. Like, I might not be nowhere where I was a few years ago, which I'm not, but now it's like, oh, now I'm a full person, now I'm a homeowner, now I'm gonna be a mom soon, and I'm just like, what the fuck, like, now I need to figure out all this. So it's kind of like you'll be in different stages, but all those different stages are teaching you something for yourself and for the version of yourself you're becoming. And I know, Priscilla, you damn ain't the same person from the first time we recorded either. Look at all the stuff you've
Mm-mm.
gone through all these years, and it's like, holy
Yeah.
crap, like it's that cute little quote I always tag you in. That's like, and I share it a lot too. Every time I see it, loving them is loving, I don't know, every single version that they become, 100 different versions of the burst that they're becoming. And I think it's really interesting because sometimes we have friends that are against us and those versions that we're changing. But as we're growing and changing and moving forward, it's so important to find your tribe and find the people that are going to help you on this journey. I just think it's so beautiful to look back at the pain and see all the beauty that was within it that
Yeah.
maybe we didn't see at the time.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
about this whole time. I'm like, how
Hmm.
beautiful to see. Yeah, I don't know, just to see who walked out of all that, who rose from the ashes from all
True.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure we learned so much about ourselves, and it was like this rewrite, but like it's like we had to take inventory, and then we got to, okay, what do I have within my reach, within my access, and what do I want to create from now? And I think like both of us really chose to create from it. We chose, we want different, we want better, we know we're capable of it. And it doesn't mean that we didn't face and hit, like you said, like hit the same wall 100 times. I think in many ways we did.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to mention before we move on a little bit is that the point of like, don't stop yourself because of the fear of what others will say. It's worth noting because here's the thing, like when you get to a really dark space, others have opinions about you, right? They may be like, "Oh, just move on," or "You should do this." And in some ways, you also have to defend that part of you. You have to defend where you're at and what you need in order to survive those moments. But once you are ready to get out of there, don't let people also be like, "Well, weren't you like this?" So like, no, let you like, just like you protected this version of you that needed to grieve or stay low or not accomplish as much or take steps backwards, defend the version of you that's ready to step forward. Don't be afraid of then shining your light so bright that maybe others will notice and then will call you out for it. Let them call you out, let them say whatever they need, interpret it the way they need, like, "Oh, you could do that for yourself but you didn't do it for me," or whatever. I don't know, I'm thinking of a million different scenarios, but like, whatever it may be, don't let that stop you, because then you go back to living for others. Then you go back to a process that isn't even yours. It's their opinion of you might change. It probably changed when you were in your low moments. Let it change when you're in your good moments, and even if they don't interpret it correctly, it's fine. You don't have to like sit with them and be like, "This is why," and this is, unless you feel like it and you feel like it's worthy of your time. But I think I felt like that's a big part. I had to put on not a shield, because once you're in this process, you learn you want to be your authentic self. But I did definitely have to put like muffle, come on, like noise canceling headphones. And I
Earplugs.
had to, yeah, like to get out of where I was at. It was like, I don't care how you interpret it. I don't care like how you view me now or how it's going to change as I change, because if you pay attention to that, then you slow your process down and it doesn't become what it needs to, you know? And I think we both get to be here because we were able to see, like, we saw it for what it was. Like, okay, some people that I love don't see me how I see me. Some people that I love, you know, aren't understanding my whole process, and that's okay. And I still get to move forward and I still get to heal, you know?
Yeah, let them. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You know what you're doing. You know what your focus is, what your journey is, and if they're meant to be in your life, they're gonna stay in your life, and they're gonna be there supporting you every step of the way, even if it's maybe from over there. You know.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
people that are meant to be there, they're gonna stay there, and
Yeah.
they will attend the birth of the person you are becoming, and know to love that version of yourself too. You know.
Yeah. Hmm. And with that, I think, you know, both of us really stepped into more authentic versions of ourselves. And from there, well, I would say even in the depths of our process, we were trying to create, you know. So you are actually who inspired the First and Healing podcast because you already had yours. And in talking to you, getting to know you, I was able to feel inspired and think like, am I capable of birthing something of my own? And the fact that, I mean, I had, you know, I already had that thought in terms of like being a guide and that kind of stuff, but you were like, hell yeah, girl, like do it. And just like the permission slip that you gave me was what allowed me to be like, okay, fine. Like,
Yes.
yeah, you were like, yes, do it. Like, why not? And
Yeah.
and for me it was like, oh my gosh, why not? And it really really helped me like move through all of the self-doubt that can come up when you're birthing something of your own. Maybe like even move through the motions of feeling inspired then uninspired. There's this feeling of like, why not me? And then who do I think I am? Like, right? Like, why not me? And you get all like, yeah, why not me? And then you're about to maybe record your first episode or invite your first guest. And then it's like, like, no, why me? Who am I? Who do I think I am? Like, why would it be me? So maybe we could talk a little bit about like what it takes to birth visions of your own, right? Like birth, you know, we're talking about birthing new versions of ourselves. I think aligned with that sometimes comes the desire to bring to life different things, right? Like a podcast, like services of your own, or a book. I've heard that too, like people wanting to write books, podcasts, use speak your truth, share your stories. And I think yeah, it's like you have experience with that.
I feel like I'm finally in the space again where, because of different life circumstances, I'm like, okay, it's time to come back to like, what do I want to put out into this world? Because I feel like it's finally time, right? But it goes back to say the same thing. We go through so many weird, like, chapters in our lives that we come back, we go away, we want to create, we don't, we stay comfortable, then we want to go back and put ourselves out there. But it's like every
Yeah.
single time I go to put myself out there again, there's always that thought that's like, crap, like what if nobody really cares what I have to say, or what if
Mm,
the stuff I work on is for nothing. It's like you always get the same thoughts, and it's okay to have those thoughts of like, what if this doesn't go how I plan, or I don't know, like the self-doubt. I think it's natural for us to have self-doubt. I really do think it is. I don't
mm,
think it's a negative thing necessarily. I
yeah.
think that it turns negative when we just completely like let it stop us from doing anything we want in this life. I think that's where it becomes like too much. The antidote to shame is to just like get in motion. So get in motion and do that first little thing that you have to do. For me, it was sitting down and doing this podcast again with Priscilla, because I have not been in front of a camera or a microphone in like, I don't even know how long at this point.
A while.
A
A
year, I
while.
don't know, a long
Yeah.
time. So for me, it was this, and now I know later, oh shit, my gears are turning again. I can do more.
Yeah.
But
Starting to
that
take
point being
action.
is that you're always going to get that self critic inside of you that wants to stop you. It's natural, but you need to be able to tell yourself, all right, we can sit down and it's time to do something that maybe we're not that comfortable with, because sometimes you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable and it's not going to feel great. But think of it this way: if no one in this world ever decided to do anything out of the norm, nothing cool would exist. Like nothing, literally nothing would exist. All these creators that you watch, like, don't you think that they had the same thoughts starting their own channels, starting their own projects, podcasts, whatever it might be? So it's kind of like you can't shut yourself down before you even try. You know,
Yeah.
you need to give yourself a chance, just like you'd want other people to give you a chance. But all the big people, celebrities, creators, famous people, all those people started with an idea. All those people started with a dream. Every single person in this world that you think of has succeeded had to have one point have had either self-doubt or doubt put on them from other people, you know? So if you want to do something different, like why not do it? You know, you have nothing to lose. I think that's the best mentality. You have nothing to lose. Just do it.
Mm.
You know, nothing to lose. Literally.
Yeah. Talking about visions, I want to share that I'm starting a group called Third Eye
Yeah.
Visionarias. Woo! Because I know, like you, that all of this stuff comes up. You're working through your own limiting beliefs, your own
Mhm.
doubt. You're like pulling inspiration from other people. Like, okay, but how come they're able to do it and not me? Or what does it take to do what they're doing? And so the vision behind Third Eye Visionarias is to get a group of Latinas that are also tapping into this. So I feel like I have witnessed in one-to-one work that once you get yourself out of the darkness, after you meet your authentic self, there's usually some sort of desire to create, whether it's to write a book, start a podcast, share your story, help others. And I've seen that with my clients, and so I was like, there must be like more of us, right? More Latinas out there that are wanting to do that, but need that maybe support, that guidance to get through the motions, you know? So this group is actually going to start on March 20th, so very, very soon. And this will be the only time that I plug it on the podcast because we only have a couple of weeks. But more information on it will be in the description. And I know that there are probably Latinas out there listening to this episode that resonate, that are like in that point of wanting to birth something, pero como que something is holding you back. Maybe your anxiety gets to you, your throat like locks up a little bit, and those are the types of things that we're going to work in this group. You know, like what that feels like, understanding how to move through it, giving space to the self doubt, and then to the empowerment, and then to the self doubt again. You know, so I'm making it like 3 months long so that there's enough time for that to happen, for the evolution of creation to happen. I feel like in the process of me birthing the First and Healing podcast and First and Healing in general, it was so helpful to have you as a friend, Yaz, you know, because you kind of were that space for me where you would listen to the self doubt and then you would also inspire me to keep moving forward. And I think I refer to that a lot when I am thinking through what Third Eye Visionarios is going to be like. You know, it's like I wanted to be a space for both, porque sometimes there are business coaches out there or just other environments that make you feel bad for what you're navigating, for the doubt you
Yeah.
have.
Mhm.
Or just tell you to push through. But we've talked about all of today's call that the point isn't to just hide those parts of you that are scared or that have
Mhm.
doubt. It's to integrate and embody and move forward. Porque si no, you can enterrarlas. Guess what's going to happen when you launch? Guess what's going to happen when you actually post your episode? They're going to come back up with all the negativity. So we don't need that. You know, we need to push or move through it differently, pues.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're someone listening that's like, and I have an idea, I have a project, I have something that I want greater than what I have now, like, you know, putting yourself in the right spaces to thrive is definitely a key. You know, putting yourself in the right spaces, putting the right information in your ears, through your eyes, literally, like, it is so powerful. So, being part of a group of other Latina women that are also focusing on this and having the guidance of Priscilla, I mean, you need to put yourself around like-minded individuals that are going to help you
Yeah.
get there, because I cannot tell you enough, like, just having other people that make you feel also less alone through what you're going through is such a gift. But also, like, I know that the group that Priscilla is going to do is also going to give you like practical steps to move forward and how to actually get to do the things that you want to do and stop just talking about it, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a big place where a lot of us get stuck. We talk about it, but we don't do it, you know?
Yeah.
So definitely being in a group of other women that are also moving forward and making that decision to pick up and get started, don't miss out on that. So come March 20th, I hope to see y'all there,
Yeah, I love
Don't
that you
miss out.
mentioned that. Just that quick little tidbit, which is the intention behind this. I'm not making it like crazy prices because I feel like there's a lot of that out there. Inflated prices for like this kind of support. I'm making it very accessible so that it's not, oh, I already invested thousands and so now I need to leave my job and make this work. I don't want you to add that pressure behind your visions, what's calling your name, your intuition. I want it to be something that feels really supportive and kind of just holds your hand in, let's take some steps towards that. Let's birth it. Let's nurture it. And so that's kind of the vibe for the group. So make sure that you check out the information in the description and that que te pongan las pilas because we're going to start really, really soon. But yeah, thank you, Yaz, for like helping me also talk through that part, which is, so important. It's like you don't get this part without everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
I haven't I feel like the people that I tend to come across, it comes after these intense periods of self-growth, of development, of facing yourself. And then life calls you in the direction of, cool, now let's share this part with others. But
Hmm.
I wanted to make sure like that we kind of tied all the pieces together, pues, porque the light that you share online también, the light that I share online comes from a lot of hard work.
At least I always try to make it a point. I know you do too. It's like it's easier said than it's done, and we know this, but there are spaces out there that can help you get there. So if you're remotely interested in being part of it, like check out the information and don't miss out on the opportunity because sometimes we just need the right people around us to help us get there. And yeah, I mean, the only thing standing between you and what you want is a decision. So make a decision today that'll make your tomorrow better. And that was my motto through when I was in the darkness. And it's still my motto now that I live in the light, you know, in the
Literally.
light. Literally, it's still a decision I make every day, So just sometimes it's that simple. Putting yourself
Yeah.
out there, make that decision, and you got this. Hmm.
Yay, so exciting. So excited. I think, yeah, a lot of people have really beautiful visions that are ready to come to life. But with that being said, again, thank you so much for going on this journey with me and like reflecting a little bit back to where we were at a few years ago, where we're finding ourselves now. You mentioned like you're a homeowner now. So what a big jump, right? Like you went from being housebound to now having your own house
My own
and
house that I can leave.
that you leave.
That I leave every day. Let me stress
Yeah.
that I at least leave every day.
Yeah. I
It's no
loved
longer a safety bubble. It's just my house I get to enjoy. Yeah, it's not a
yes.
prison
Yeah.
because yeah, the other one felt like a prison or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so much expansion and I feel like one of the memories that I remember, which was not long ago, but you were like driving from fishing on your way to like soccer or something. No sé como you had so
Mm.
many things going on and we
Yeah,
were
I
on the
was fishing and I
phone
had soccer practice like right after that. Yeah.
and we were on the phone and you were
Mm-hmm.
driving and you're like
Oh yeah.
telling me all this. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, girl, have you noticed how different your life is now in just like a
Mm-hmm.
year or a little bit over that?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because in the past it was like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm home. Me too. I was like home. We were just
Yeah.
like, FaceTime buddies.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, we still make
um,
the time to FaceTime, buddy. That's for sure. But
yeah,
it's different. It's very, very different. But I love that it's different in its own ways. Yeah, it was
yeah.
funny. That time you stopped me, I was like, oh shit, you're right. What? You know? I was like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
literally just got out of doing an activity. Now I'm driving to another activity. And I said, oh, it's not that far, 20 minutes away. And I'm like, bitch, you couldn't even walk a minute away at some point, Like, look at
Yeah,
you driving like 10 miles to go just to play soccer.
yeah.
So Just that's the beauty of life. It can change and it will change. And if you're in a dark place right now, know that it can change and that your life has all the opportunity and all the space to be beautiful again. And you need to just hang on and do the work and be honest with yourself, and you will get there.
Yeah. And I truly feel like it's like a snowball effect. Like when you pick up momentum,
Mm-hmm.
one thing after another, who has the capability of stopping you is you, but also who has the ability to let yourself keep going is you.
Mm-hmm.
If you allow for that snowball of positive effect to keep going, it's gonna keep happening. It's gonna keep coming. Like you're gonna continue to expand. And I feel like Yaz is such a beautiful testament of that. And thank you for sharing the some of those parts. Some of the parts that need to happen before you see this, because online you could see like, oh wow, like she's no longer housebound and she's doing blank blank blank. um it's like, yeah, and it took a lot of fucking work.
And it
A
took a long
lot.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it did. It did. Yeah.
Okay, pues yes. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was so lovely to catch up with you. Cuídate mucho. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember to love yourselves and share this with your amigas, amigos, amigues. Okay, pues ya nos vamos.
But
Bye.